The only other place I could think to look for Jerry was our room. I kept my eyes down as I cut through the parlor and the great hall. As far as I was concerned, there was no need to talk to any of these people ever again. I'd socialized enough for 1 year. Before I could reach the base of the grand staircase, I noticed that the air smelled like sweet tobacco smoke. I soon realized that the smell was coming from the front door. And now that I didn't have a blade to my face, I could see the situation in front of me with much more clarity. It was obvious where Jerry had disappeared to. All I had to do was follow the smell of the smoke. I pushed open the front door right as another crack of lightning filled the night sky. The thunder ended, followed by a guilty sounding, "Hey, buddy." It was Jerry. He and Tobias looked back at me from the porch railing, both equipped with lit cigars and half-empty glasses. Jerry held up his Monte Cristo No. 3 and said, "It's not what it looks like." "I don't care." "Really? Because I think you do," he said, raising an eyebrow. "Well, I don't." "You do a little." "No?" "Okay, agree to disagree then." "You said you weren't going to leave me alone." "I did say that, but T-Bone here dropped his wallet, and I had to come give it back to him." "Oh, T-Bone dropped his wallet, did he?" Tobias flicked the ash over the railing and said, "It must have fallen out of my jacket pocket." I was already over this conversation. "Tobias, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need a moment alone with Jerry." "Sure, go right ahead. I'll stay right here." "Actually, I think we're going to need the patio to ourselves." He sipped his drink, darted his eyes back and forth between me and Jerry, and then said, "Is this something time sensitive? I'm only asking because I just lit this and..." I switched tactics. Your wife is looking for you, Tobias." "Bridget's looking for me? Why?" "She spilt jam on her dress." "Jam?" Tobias asked incredulously. "Yep," I confirmed. "Jam all over her dress. Just all over it." "I didn't even know they had jam in there." "Well, they don't anymore." "So you're saying, just so I understand the situation, not only did Bridget spill jam all over her dress, but somehow managed to spill the entire party supply of jam on her dress?" Jeez, what is this guy, the jam police? Jerry cleared his throat abruptly. It sounded an awful lot like a snicker he was trying to hold back in. "Look, dude, I don't know what to tell you, but I promise I would never lie about something like this. Your wife is devastated. She's crying and everything. She asked me to go find you." He crooked his head slightly and gave me a long, uncomfortable glare until Jerry stepped in. "Don't worry, T-Bone. I'll keep your cigar warm for you." Tobias finally surrendered. "Okay, I guess I better make sure everything's alright." With that, he handed Jerry his cigar and walked past me. The moment the door closed, Jerry asked, "Do you think I'd look good with a mullet?" "No, of course not. Now, shut up and listen for a second. I have a very serious question. Jerry, is there any chance you somehow orchestrated all of this in an extremely elaborate hoax just to give me a perverted sense of misadventure? Because if that's the case, I really appreciate the impressive effort, but I want to opt out now." "No. But damn, that would have been a good idea. I'll have to remember that for your birthday. Please, don't. We need to leave. Pronto." He carefully placed Tobias' cigar next to his own in the ashtray, on the table by the railing. He didn't have nearly the appropriate sense of urgency. With a smirk, he asked, "Did something ominous just happen?" "The lady with the kleptomaniac son knows my name. She said my luggage showed up in her room." "Well, that's convenient, and also quite alarming. Thank you for confiding in me, Jack." "Jerry, listen! While we're getting ready, somebody went out into the rain, found our car, broke in, packed a mother-flippin' bag, and brought it back to the manor. Why would anyone do something like that?" Jerry leaned against the railing, putting on his thinking face. He mulled it over for a few seconds before responding. "It must be because you said you needed your medicine in order to stay the night. So, that means two things. First, someone must want us not to have a reason to leave. And second, someone's watching us." "Great. Our room is bugged. I can assume they have videos of me in the shower now." Oh. Jerry's eyes got very wide. What? I think I know what's going on here. What? Yep, that's definitely it. What? You're not gonna like it. What? He cleared his throat, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, I think we've just stumbled into a sex cult. I waited a moment, as to not sound like a broken record, then said, What? Think about it. I will do no such thing, and you can't make me. He lifted the glass to his mouth, but I slapped it out of his hand before he could take another drink. It shattered against the porch. Hey, he snapped. That could be poison for all we know. Oh yeah, he said. Now that you mention it, it probably is. Well, what are we waiting for, Jerry? Let's go. Okay, yes, but no. Jerry, I'm not playing around. I've seen this movie. I know how it ends. If we go back inside, I hear you. I hear you. But let's think this through. His voice was annoyingly calm and level. First of all, we can't leave without your medicine, and I think they know that. Oh, and they probably want to use you as some kind of virgin sacrifice to a Norse fertility god. Why would they? Additionally, you and I probably aren't the only strangers in a strange land, if you know what I mean. What about the other guests? Either they're all complicit in the grand strategy to keep us here. He was making a lot of sense, and I hated it. I let out a long, frustrated sigh and finished the thought for him. Or there are other victims we would be abandoning if we left now. We just need a plan. Here's what I think should do. One of us goes in and causes a distraction in the parlor, preferably fire-related, while the other one sneaks downstairs to the basement and uses the phone to call for help. That's the plan. I couldn't even hide my apprehension to this, nor did I feel the need to try to. We're gonna go with the split-up gang? How many times? The front door opened. A second later, Bridget's head peered out, looking around and then said, Oh, I thought Tobias was out here. Have either of you seen him? I searched for a good lie, but all I could come up with was, Tobias spilt jam all over his trousers, just all over him. He went to the room to change. She narrowed her eyes at me, and then slowly backed into the house and closed the door. Whew, that was a close one. As usual, the least bad plan we could come up with was still a pretty darn bad plan. Dividing up tasks was easy. I'm rarely the sneakiest person in the room, but distractions were undeniably Jerry's bread and butter. I could never count on anything going according to plan, but I was still surprised just how quickly things went off the rails. As soon as the front door shut behind us, Maggie popped out of nowhere to say that dinner was ready and our presence was required. Then she herded us to the dining room, where the rest of the guests were gathered around a long wooden table, chatting, laughing, enjoying their drinks. The immediate silence that occurred when we entered may as well have been accompanied by a record scratch. Jerry whispered, Is it just me, or do things feel a little hostile right now? Tobias and Bridget shared the unique look of, Why'd you lie to me about the jam? On their faces. Just all over their faces. Hope shook her head and folded her arms at the annoying guy who rudely walked away from her mid-sentence. Lauren made the subtle but threatening gesture of running her thumb across her neck. Even old man Nathaniel What's-His-Name III turned to face us, making a toasting gesture with the glass of brandy that somebody else must have gotten for him after I said I wouldn't just bailed on him. That's when it occurred to me that I had already managed to piss off every other group here. Maggie stood in the doorway as we took our spots at the dinner table. Jerry sat to my right, protecting me from the blind man. Lauren sat to my left, protecting Claire from me. And the rest of the group took the other side, with Wolfgang directly my opposite. Nobody took the seat at the head of the table. I was still trying to work out how we were going to cause a distraction when Jerry made things weird. Before we begin, he announced, pushing back on a seat and standing up, I believe it'd be a good idea to say a few words of grace to our Lord and Savior. I beg your pardon? Said Maggie. My pardon, I grant thee, he replied with a wave of his hand. And now, if you would all be so kind as to close your eyes and bow your heads, I will deliver the most amazing prayer of thanks this side of the BC AD conversion. After a few uncomfortable seconds, he repeated himself, a little bit louder and a little more forcefully. "Please close your eyes and bow your heads." Everyone else reluctantly followed his command. Everyone except me. I held out my hands and mouthed the words, "What the fuck?" He began speaking, praying, while gesturing wildly at the door. "Dearest Lord, hi, it's me, Jerry. We met at Vassar College. At one time I took too many psychedelics and he told me that birds weren't real. Anyway, I know it's been a while since we last spoke. Sorry about that. Things have been wild. We come today to thank you for this presumably delicious meal we're about to chow up. But first, I'd like to spend a moment catching up." It finally hit me. Nobody was looking. This was the distraction. I carefully scooted my chair back and pushed myself to my feet. I'd have to sneak around a few people, but barring a stumble or a surprise sneeze, this was really doable. Knowing Jerry, he'd have everyone singing along to Amazing Grace by the time I got to call the police and got back to the table. I tried to tune him out while focusing on the escape, but some words still broke through to me. Because when you think about it, that's what tattoos are for. But I digress. We come to you today to thank you for the food and drink, heyo, and also to thank you for this wonderful lodging and the company we have here today. And the chairs, table, the rest of the furniture, and I held my breath as I stepped past Lauren. She was the one I was most afraid of. But her head was down and eyes were closed, just like all the others. As soon as I thought I was out of the woods, a hand popped out, blocking my path. It was Claire's. It was holding a folded note. The side facing me read, "Jack." I hesitated. And when we think of the food we're about to put inside of us, we're all reminded of the struggles that Jesus went through when he gave up sex for 40 days. I once tried to go 40 days without cupcakes. I didn't even make it a week, which is weird because I actually despise cupcakes. Claire flicked the note twice. Her eyes were closed, but I knew she knew I was here. There was no point in pretending. I reached down and took the paper from her fingers. She quickly retracted her hand, putting it in the sign of prayer in front of her face. There was no time to stop and read. I kept walking. The door was right beside there. Maggie stood in front of it, face aimed down at her feet, eyes pressed shut. I could sneak around her, but I couldn't rush it if I didn't want to be noticed. I had to focus on not making any sound. "And the plesiosaur, and the helicoprion, and let's not forget the gigantoraptor. Anyway, in conclusion, thanks for wiping out so many of the apex predators before we got here." Kaboom! The building reverberated like the inside of a bass drum that got hit with a comet, plunging us into total darkness and permanently ending Jerry's prayer. There were a few gasps, a nervous laugh, a chair scraping against the floor. Somebody hurried to their feet. I turned around, facing the direction of the table, just in time for one of the other guests to slam into me as they rushed past. "Somebody tell me, please, what happened?" Nathaniel called out. "That sounded like thunder." Jerry responded, "The lights went out." Nathaniel raised his voice into a command. "Everybody stay calm. Stay put. I'm sure our host has some candles or a torch." A short, silent moment passed. Then we heard a scream. A horrifying, blood-curdling, high-pitched, high-squeal scream coming from the Great Hall, less than 5 steps away from me. Jerry chuckled and made a faux orchestral dun-da-da. The plan had gone off the rails, again. I tried sneaking back to my seat through the darkness, but a tiny spotlight lit up the room, stopping me in my tracks. It was coming from Lauren's phone, pointed right at my eyes. "Where are you going?" she asked loud enough for everyone to hear. I covered my eyes and stammered my way through a terribly unconvincing lie. "I wanted to go investigate the scream." "Oh? Were you moonwalking there?" she asked. "Looks like you're facing the wrong direction to be going towards the scream." For some reason, Jerry took her side. "Yeah, Jack, why are you acting so suspiciously?" "Look," I said. "It was dark, okay? I must have gotten turned around." The house lights flickered back to life. Tobias and Bridget clapped, and Jerry joined them. Everyone seemed confused on multiple levels. "I assume the lights are back on," Nathaniel stated. Jerry turned back to him and asked, "How'd you know?" I gathered as much from your applause. Oh, that's why they were clapping. I was wondering. Lauren cleared her throat and said, "Well, what are we supposed to do now?" A soft voice crept up into the conversation. Hey guys, where did Miss Maggie go?" I looked around and discovered that the old woman had pulled her surprise sneak up on you act again, only in reverse. Jerry made eye contact with me and pushed his chair back, announced, "We'll go check it out, right, Jack?" "Why don't we all go?" Lauren asked. There's something unnerving about her accusing eyes and sarcastic tone. After all, there's safety in numbers, right, Jack? "Yeah," Tobias agreed. As he and Bridget pushed out their chairs, "Let's go see what all the commotion was. Then we can finally eat. I'm starving." The commotion, it seemed, was the foretold murder. The victim was lying face down in the Great Hall. Poor old Maggie. She'd been done in the brief blackout. It wouldn't take a master detective to conclude the untimely demise. It had something to do with the large knife protruding from the center of her back. But the perpetrator of the crime was anyone's guess. Jerry put his hands on his cheeks and wailed in distress, "Oh no, not Maggie!" Nathaniel was the last one into the room, tapping the floor in front of him as he walked. "Did something happen?" he asked. Lauren answered casually, "Oh, our hostess was murdered and I'm pretty sure Jack did it." "What?" I tried not to sound too defensive. "Why me?" Bridget laughed and added, "I'm sorry, Jack. No offense, but it looks like you're busted." Tobias raised his hand and said, "I would also like to cast my vote for Jack." "Now, hang on a minute," Nathaniel interrupted. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Surely, if a murder occurred, there'll be clues to provide the killer's guilt. We all need to take a moment and investigate our surroundings." Others reluctantly began searching the area, giving me an opportunity to finally sneak away. Tobias and Bridget were hand in hand, looking at paintings as I passed. Lauren and Claire inspected a suit of armor. Hope was talking to Nathaniel, while Wolfgang played with a fire poker. Before I could reach the door to the basement, Jerry called out my name. I turned around to see him waving me over, crouched next to the body of our fallen hostess. I had to admit, she was doing a terrific job of playing dead. I couldn't even see her breathing. I crossed the room and knelt down next to him. Yeah. His voice was low. His eyes were fixed on the hilt of the dagger. First of all, I want to apologize. I like the sudden serious timbre in his voice. Okay. For what? Guess a lot of things. Sorry, I didn't listen. Sorry, I didn't get you out of here when I said we would. And sorry I dragged you along on this road trip. I was surprised he was saying all this right in front of old Maggie. I knew she was hard of hearing, but still. Hope called out to us from the other side of the room. "Remember, if you find any clues, you're supposed to share with the group." Bridget called back, "We found something. There's a series of serial numbers on the frames of each of the paintings." The crowd flowed over to them. Jerry yelled out, "We'll be right there," and then dropped his volume to a whisper and said, "You were right." I didn't really like the sound of that. "What's wrong?" I asked him. "Maggie's dead." "Yeah, I know. I have eyes and ears. She was probably killed." No. You don't understand. Maggie, her body. How do I put this delicately? She's, leaking. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I made it a point to cherish this moment. The moment before things went bad. The moment before all hell broke loose. It was nice, but it was just that. Just a moment. And then it was all over too soon. When I opened my eyes again, Jerry had a painted expression on his face. "Are you mad at me?" he asked. I looked down and noted the blood pooling around the body, coming from the wound. Some from her open mouth. Her eyes were magnified by the broken glasses. They were enormous, focused on nothing. "That depends," I said. "Did you kill her?" "No. Did you?" "No." "Are we certain she's not just a world-class actress?" Hang on, let me check." Jerry licked his finger and stuck it under the woman's glasses. He poked her exposed eyeball. When she didn't blink, he wiped his hand off at my jacket and said, "Yep, we're sure." "Okay, what are we supposed to do now?" I don't know, but the longer we go without saying anything, the weirder it's going to be when the rest of the group figures out that we're just chilling next to a dead woman this whole time. Maybe they won't have to find out. Ah, Jerry nodded. I see. A second passed, then. Actually, I don't see. We just need to get everyone out of here so we can move her body to the basement. We'll call the police and let the authorities figure out the murder sex cult mystery for once. Jerry stood up and cleared his throat. He announced, Jack and I have found a clue. No, don't come over here. The clue says we should all go to our rooms and await further instructions. The others stared back. Tobias stepped forward saying, Can I see this clue? No, Jerry stated. You're just going to have to believe me on this one. Why? Lauren asked. Jerry waved his hands in the air like he was conducting music. All will be revealed in due time, but I promise for now we must go to our rooms. Nathaniel responded, I feel as if we haven't found any of the necessary clues to solving the mystery of Bedside Manor. Jerry needed some help. Unfortunately, I was the only one able to give it. I stood up, nearly lost my balance, and found it at the last possible second, turned to the others, took a step forward, and said the first thing that came to mind. Look, everyone, I know you're But then my foot didn't stop like it was supposed to. Instead, it whipped out from under me, sliding in the puddle of blood. Before I knew it, I hit the ground. Except that wasn't quite it. Nope, it was much worse. All of the others screamed at once, Oh my god, are you okay? Shit! Whoa! I tried to play it off and get back to my feet and tell them I was fine, but a soft bag of garbage had broken my fall. But then I realized I had actually slipped and fallen right on top of the dead body. The others surrounded us. Jerry pulled me to my feet and tried to calm everyone down. Not to worry, this is all part of the act. Please go back to your rooms. Nothing to see here. Lauren shoved me out of the way as she and Bridget dropped to either side of Maggie, asking a lot of questions, and they weren't going to get any answers for them. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Can you hear me? Maggie? Tobias put his hand on my shoulder and spun me around to face him. Is that blood on your shirt? Are you bleeding? Yes, I said. No, it's jam. Bridget gasped and then covered her mouth. Didn't take them very long to figure it out. This was a pretty smart crowd, and we had just lost control of the narrative. I had to try something, no matter how desperate. How much does a polar bear weigh? Unsurprisingly, that didn't work. Lauren jumped to her feet, grabbed Claire by the hand, and backed away a couple of steps before saying it. She's dead. She's really actually dead. What? Jerry tried. Nah, she's not. She just... See, what happened was... He exhaled loudly and lowered his head. Okay, yes, she's really dead. I know this looks bad, but... Hope screamed. The room erupted into chaos. People started shouting over one another. Somehow, I got knocked down. Again. I crab-crawled all the way back to a bookshelf. Everyone was arguing. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Lauren and Tobias were both pointing at me. And I knew that wasn't a good sign. A loud, shrill whistle managed to shut everybody up. Nathaniel had everyone's undivided attention. Everybody, please, calm down. Nobody was calm, but at least they were silent now. It's good enough. It seems that things have gotten quite out of hand. Before we bite each other's throats out, I would appreciate some level-headed fact-finding. Bridget, are we sure Maggie is... Bridget grabbed her husband and said, Yes, she isn't breathing. She has no pulse. And that knife, someone really stabbed her. Hope had her arms around her son. We know who it was. It was that man, Jack Townsend. Me? I asked. There was a whole pharmacy stockpile worth of antipsychotics in his backpack. Clearly, he forgot to take his meds. Whoa, I yelled. That's not anyone's business, but I didn't forget to take my meds. I have an alarm set on my phone that always reminds me to take my meds because if I don't... Alright, this isn't helping. I shut up just a little too late. Tobias attempted to keep the peace. Alright, let's just stay cool. Maybe it was Jack, maybe it wasn't. Either way, we need to call 911. Lauren was the first to say, My cell phone isn't getting any service. Next, it was Bridget, Then Hope, and finally Tobias. There's another phone, I said. It's in the basement. A landline. It should be able to reach the outside. We'll go check it out, Tobias said. But first, we need to get everyone together. If there's a killer on the loose, we can't let him pick us off one at a time. We'll go tell the workers, Lauren said, taking Claire as they left before anybody could argue. As soon as they were gone, Jerry walked over to my side. Well, it's been fun, he said, helping me back up again. Sounds like you guys totally got this thing under control now. No reason for us to stick around. You ready to go, Jack? Tobias stepped closer to us. And where exactly do you think you're going? Anywhere but here. I mean, Jack's got this thing about murders. He hates when it happens. I'm sorry, Bridget crossed her arms. When this happens? Has this sort of thing happened to you before? Jerry laughed. Yeah, once or twice. Tobias narrowed his eyes. That's awfully suspicious. Huh, I know, right? Which is exactly why we're gonna get going before the police arrive. Otherwise, they're gonna think we had something to do with it. I didn't want it to come to this, but if you insist. Tobias bent over and pulled up his pant leg. He retrieved a small handgun from a holster above his ankle. He kept it aimed at the ground for now, but the presence of a deadly weapon was all it took for his commands to gain a lot more authority. You're both going to stay right here until we figure out what's going on. A gun? Jerry asked. Really, T-Bone? After all we've been through? That's not very cash money of you. I don't want to use this, but I can't just let a killer go free. Shoot him in the legs, Hope screamed, just to be safe. Lauren ran back into the room, shouting, Guys! She froze at the sight of the gun. Whoa, what's happening? It's okay, Tobias said. I have a concealed carry permit for this. Well, that's a relief, Lauren responded disingenuously. But before we start blasting away, we need to tell you something. What is it? Hope asked. Claire wandered into the room and announced, There's nobody else here. What do you mean? Tobias said. Lauren elaborated. There's no one in the kitchen, no workers, no actors, no staff. There isn't even any food back there. We are all alone in this house. Hope, Bridget, and Tobias said at the same time, What? That's not all, Lauren continued. There's something else you should know. Claire and I were not even supposed to be here. Jerry and I shared a look, and he asked, What do you mean? I mean, we're not really guests. Our cars broke down this morning. We were just passing by. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. Oh my God, Hope exclaimed, clutching her chest. You're not going to believe this, but we're not supposed to be here either. We were on our way home and our car died right up the road. We had to walk here. Maggie said we could stay, but we had to pretend to be guests. Well, this was one twist I did not see coming. Bridget grabbed her husband's arm and gave him a serious look. He nodded and said, Yeah, that's exactly what happened to us. My truck has less than 10,000 miles on it. There's no reason it should have stalled. We had to hike a couple of miles up a hill. The old lady told us to mingle and fake like we belonged here. Jerry tisk-tisked and said, Well, I for one am shocked. Here we are paying full price, and they're just giving rooms away for free. I'll be telling Yelp about this. I punched him in the shoulder and set the record straight. We are all in the same boat here. Wait, Hope said. If none of us are really guests, then how did Nathaniel... We looked around and realized at the same time that the blind old man evidently disappeared into thin air. Tobias was the one to say what we were all thinking. What the hell is going on here?